Welcome to the Demystifying Technology podcast from the MacLaurin Group.
Typically, you go through the due diligence process. What the world of private equity?
Right. Can't wait. Demystify it.
MacLaurin Group was a proud gold sponsor at this year's ACG Richmond Capital Conference. While there, we hosted a series of short conversations with experts in the private equity space to discover their outlook and areas of excitement as they look toward the coming year. In this episode, Alan Williamson speaks with Jonathan Brabrand, Managing Director of Fahrenheit Advisors, entrepreneur and author of the $100 million Exit, Lessons for Every Business Owner. The expected publication is April 2020. How does a business owner know they want to sell? Is it worth investing in a second-level management team before selling? Jonathan shares insight into how he advises business owners on the necessary steps to become more attractive to private equity to sell their businesses.
It's ACG 2019, Jefferson, Richmond. Sunny day. We've got Jonathan with us from Fahrenheit Advisors. How are you today, Jonathan?
Doing very well, Alan. Thank you for having me.
So you're in the world of M&A.
I am indeed.
Sounds very exotic. What does that mean?
Essentially, I help business owners sell their company. And what I love about that is it helps them realize the economic benefit of the company they've built, often over decades. And it's sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
How do they know they want to sell? When do they sort of pick up the phone to you?
Oftentimes it's too late. One of the things I encourage my clients is to start thinking about and planning for selling earlier than they might otherwise. But it's often either they've been approached by a buyer and they need help in responding to that, or it's in response to some life event where maybe they've had a health scare, or maybe they finally realize that their children are not going to take over the business and the plan that they had for this to be passed down is not going to work out. And so they need to think about other alternatives.
And can any business be sold, or is there a type of business that just doesn't have a longevity after that founder or that CEO?
That is a fantastic question. I talk a lot about, and I'm actually working on this in a new book that I'm going to come out with in April, about the difference between a business and a job. So businesses can be sold, jobs cannot. And how do you know if you have a business or you have a job? And they can look scarily similar. And the answer is, if you were to step back away from that business or job, would it be able to run, even limp along without you? And if it cannot, you have a job, and that's not sellable. You could make as much money as you can while you're there, and when you leave, you'll turn out the lights.
So if the founder takes a month off and the company flounders, then
yes,
that's more of a job.
It's more of a job.
Interesting. So what is the sort of sweet spot for you? What type of size of companies are we talking about?
I typically work with businesses that are in the 10 million in revenue up to 50 or 60 million in revenue. They have reached a scale where they're meaningful and sizable, but there's still a lot of growth left ahead of them.
Right. And is there any typical industries you like to focus on, or is it really just down to the person's individual personality? Exactly.
No, industry agnostic. Wide experience in business services, manufacturing, distribution, healthcare, all over the board.
And what are the hot industries at the moment? What is selling and what is sort of struggling to get buyers?
As we think about this part of the economic cycle, which we all think is in the latter stages, but no one knows exactly when the music will stop, that's affecting the industries that are in favor and out of favor. Right now it's probably difficult to sell businesses that are considered late stage and are tied to construction and a lot of new investment. So building materials and things like that are more challenging. Tech-enabled services, asset-light businesses that have more of a service component and can be seen to be more flexible are more in favor right now.
Okay. And as we look at so let's imagine the founder or the CEO or the owner of the company sitting there thinking, you said they're typically, when it comes to a lifetime event, how often are they looking to stay in the business as it goes forward and just take a chunk of change out of the business in order for them to sort of shore up their retirement, but still continue because they still love this thing. This is their...
Right. So I would love to see more of that exact situation. I have a client of mine, and I profiled this in the book, who built a business at 25 million in revenue, 100% on his own, and realized that really to take it to the next level, he didn't want to stop. He wanted to continue growing it. He needed a partner. And so he took on a private equity partner and sold the majority of his company at that stage, took a bunch of capital out and kind of set it aside, and that's safe for his family and college and the future. That private equity group helped him grow it from 25 million in revenue to 50 over 2 or 3 years through a variety of resources they were able to bring. They sold it to a second one that through acquisitions grew it to 750 million in revenue.
Wow.
Over 5 years. And he's still running it. He still loves it. It's still his baby. But with this extra capital and expertise that these groups were able to provide, it's wildly bigger than he ever could have done on his own. And it's now just been sold for a third time. He's now chairman of the board, and it's on its way to $1 billion. And he would never have been able to do that without that help.
So clearly he has gone through a phenomenal learning cycle in order to scale up to that size of stuff. So how do you prepare the would-be seller to say, hey, your life is about to change here. You're not going to come back into the same company you've been coming into for the past 25 years.
It's a challenge for business owners to get over that step. The ones, though, that can see that this is, as you just asked, this is the first step in a longer game plan. Those are the ones that get it. There are plenty of business owners, by the time they come to me, they're exhausted, they're fatigued, they want out. And I'm the exit button for them to kind of step back and retire. Those are not going to be set up well for private equity and this kind of multi-step growth plan that I just described. Nor are they going to be attracted to private equity who are looking to ultimately back management teams. That's probably the biggest challenge when we talk about that business versus job, is to be able for a business owner to be attracted to private equity, which is a huge swath of the buyer universe. You have to have a successor and a management team that they can back.
So that second in command, effective, that team underneath you that can...
And without that, you're unattractive to private equity, and you're limited to strategic buyers, which can still be a good outcome. It's going to be a more narrow range than you might otherwise have. And it's a challenge for these lower middle market companies to invest in a second level management team, but it's so valuable and so important.
So will you get involved in the type of discussions, etc., where a founder may come to you a little bit too early and say, okay, right, you maybe a year, we need to get the house in order first?
Yep. There is. And there's a lot that we can do. Lucky to be part of a broader consulting firm that has some resources that we can bring internally. I can help them find external resources as well that can help them get ready, kind of get their house in order, just like you said. Just like you might stage a house or make improvements to your house before you sell it, there's a business equivalent to that as well.
And what would you say is a sort of the biggest misconception that people have in around this process when they enter it?
You know, I think there's the fallacy that I have seen over and over again is actually one of two extremes. Either they feel like the M&A process, the process to sell a business, is so difficult, so opaque, so hard to understand that they shy away from ever wanting to do it.
Like running for office, everything's going to be detailed.
Yeah. And they have no idea what it seems expensive, it seems difficult, it seems like we're going to be sharing a bunch of information that's confidential and makes me feel uncomfortable. And I put it off until I can put it off no longer. On the other end of the extreme, though, I think there are people who feel like it's so easy that when the time comes in 30 days, I'll have multiple offers and it'll just be done. And it won't really require much time or effort. Neither of those is correct.
Right.
And so I kind of lay in the middle of that and help business owners understand that it's not that difficult and opaque if you have a good advisor like me or other people in my role to help you through the process. But it's a 6 to 9 month process. This is not something that you wake up, snap your fingers, and in 30 days you've got millions of dollars in your bank.
Got it. And what is your advice regarding bringing the whole company along? Are you a fan of transparency, or is there a period of time where you're still trying to find out if this is really truly for the seller?
That's a great question and one we get a lot. I'm a fan of staged transparency. So being as upfront as you can at the appropriate stage of the process. And where that essentially looks like is at the beginning of a process, it's going to be a pretty tight-knit group that needs to be involved to show depth of team. So it's probably going to be your top 2 to 5 executives in the company. And they're going to be involved in preparing the materials and a meeting with buyers. And I think there's a stage when it starts to become more serious where you might want to get ahead of people who would be out in the marketplace like salespeople. So if you hear rumors in the marketplace, this is something that we're proactively thinking about, and it's a good thing for the company, and you can get a more positive spin on it rather than having them hear it from the outside. As you have picked a buyer or in diligence, they're going to want access to that next level of management. You're going to want to bring them in. And then just before closing, I think it's a time to get ahead of it and make it a celebration of a next chapter in this company's evolution and make it public completely.
Got it. Now, we also get involved in due diligence ourselves, etc., and we sometimes find that what worries the seller is usually irrational. It's actually not what the private equity firm is that bothered about in the first place, because certain problems are solvable.
Yes.
But from from the lens of that side, it feels like, oh God, this is the only problem I've got.
Right.
But what's your experience in that side of the fence in terms of coaching companies through the fact that, hey, this is not as big a problem as you may think it is?
Yeah, it's a great point. So I help business owners realize that private equity groups like to see opportunities for improvement. So if the business were running at tip-top 100%, you would also turn off a lot of private equity groups. They're looking for opportunities to make the business better.
They want to do a upper.
Exactly. And some want really difficult fixer-uppers. Others only want to make minor tweaks. But on that spectrum, they all want some type of improvements to be made. And so where I help my clients think about is presenting these challenges as opportunities, ones that they haven't been able to address due to lack of resources economically or managerial or time. And they are aware of them, and that with the private equity's help in those areas, they'll be more easily addressed.
Brilliant. Thank you for taking the time with us today, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
When's the book out?
The book is out April 2020. It's called $100 Million Exits, Lessons for Every Business Owner. And I've basically taken and looked at large transactions that have been wildly successful, like the ones that I mentioned and others, and helped glean from that 9 or 10 lessons that business owners of any size can apply to their business today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.